What if a small team of just 20 elite soldiers slipped unseen through enemy lines, right under the nose of the world's most powerful military forces? Imagine a night so silent, the usual drone buzz and distant artillery fire simply vanished, leaving only darkness and an eerie calm. This was the scene on September 9, 2025, near the border forests outside a city called Sumi. Into this unnatural quiet stepped the Alpha Unit, an elite squad handpicked for a mission no one dared call anything but deadly. Their assignment? To trek 20 kilometers through dense woodland, avoid every enemy patrol, slip into a hostile city, and vanish again, with no one ever realizing they were there. This wasn't just any raid. According to a source within Russia's military command, this group was the heart of an operation codenamed Northern Fang, a daring strike that would shake the Ukrainian front like never before. The backdrop had been set 2 days earlier, when the 25th Russian Motorized Rifle Brigade smashed through Ukrainian defenses near a place called Podyunikivka at 3 p.m. local time on September 8. After fierce fighting, Ukrainian forces retreated to Suma's northern outskirts, leaving a 30-kilometer-long gap, a perfect corridor for stealth. That's the route Alpha used. General Alexei Vorontsov laid it out bluntly: after Unikivka fell, we knew the opposition was disorganized. Time was tight, but the opportunity was rare. Russian intelligence had long monitored the industrial zone on Suma's edge. In a derelict building of a former bearing factory, they pinpointed what they believed to be a NATO field coordination headquarters. The route was crafted with precision, forged to stay hidden even from the skies above. The team moved exclusively under cover of darkness, armed with state-of-the-art technology. Heat signature dampeners and false signals fed to satellite sensors made them ghosts. "We moved like shadows," remarked an anonymous foreign intelligence officer with a dry hint of irony. Even local foresters, seeing the tracks, assumed wild boars had passed. 20 men. 20 kilometers. In the dead of night. No drones. No gunfire. Just a silent invasion that nobody saw coming. But what would this ghost operation uncover inside the heart of enemy territory? And how would the world react when the unthinkable happened? The calm before the storm was about to shatter. On the dark evening of September 9, 2025, a highly trained unit known as Group Alpha stealthily advanced towards the town of Sumy. Using cutting-edge technology, they moved like shadows under the cover of night, eluding detection by their adversaries. With a plan meticulously crafted to avoid aerial surveillance, they bypassed enemy strongholds, their every step a calculated risk. As dusk approached, the team reached the outskirts of Sumy. At precisely 2:30 a.m. local time on September 10, the group penetrated the fortified barriers of a former factory, where they knew high-ranking officials of the Pentagon were coordinating military operations. Silently, they neutralized an 8-man guard without firing a single shot, using sophisticated jamming devices that temporarily disabled surveillance systems. Inside the secure bunker, 2 officers, Major Jonathan Miller and Captain Matthew Rogers, were captured alive. This flawless operation was a surgical strike. Not a single civilian was harmed. General Alexei Vorontsov stood firm, declaring the plan a brilliant success, executed with precision. However, chaos erupted in Ukrainian and Western media as reports began to emerge. At 7:45 a.m., The Independent broke the news of lost communication with the command center in Sumy. An hour later, CNN confirmed the loss of contact with 2 U.S. officers in the area, sending shockwaves through Washington. By 9:15 a.m., President Trump took to his platform, expressing outrage with a post that echoed across the globe. "It's disgraceful. How could our people fall into the hands of Russia?" he lamented. As the day unfolded, there were no immediate responses from NATO's command in Brussels. It was not until the evening of September 11 that White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre stated they were verifying the facts and exploring all possible options. What unforeseen consequences did this operation unleash? The repercussions were about to unfold. The world is reeling from a shocking operation that changed the course of geopolitics overnight. Following the capture of American officers in Ukraine, silence fell over Washington, D.C. starting on the night of September 11. Details began to emerge that would disrupt the very fabric of trust between nations. Reports from military sources reveal that a covert unit, Alpha, successfully returned to Russian territory with not only the captured officers but also extensive digital archives from NATO, operational plans, supply routes, and direct communication protocols with Washington. This intelligence coup has been likened to the Cold War's most critical moments, leaving analysts forecasting an uncertain future. How could America's defenses fail so utterly? In the aftermath, politicians are in turmoil. Senators demand emergency meetings to assess national security. Whispers in Congress suggest a suspension of American military advisors in Ukraine until the full scope of this incident is revealed. Rumors swirl in Kyiv that 3 high-ranking generals responsible for security at the Sumy headquarters have already been dismissed. The global impact is monumental. Al Jazeera describes the mission as the boldest act of sabotage of the 21st century. There's a lingering shock within NATO circles, and a European diplomat has warned that if Russia can abduct NATO officers within Ukraine's borders, no one feels safe anymore. Meanwhile, the Russian state has remained tight-lipped about the whereabouts of the captured officers, although rumors suggest they may be held in a classified facility near Kaluga. In a matter of hours, September 10, 2025, could be marked in history books as the day the impossible became possible. A team of just 20 operatives traversed 20 kilometers through hostile terrain, infiltrated the heart of enemy lines, and extracted NATO officers without a trace. As President Trump grapples with intense anger and confusion, Moscow remains shrouded in quiet contemplation. What will this mean for America's standing on the global stage? Will this incident mark a turning point in military engagement? The stakes couldn't be higher. The balance of power is shifting, and the whole world is watching. As military tension mounts, one question looms: what will be the response to this audacious breach of safety, and how far will each side go to reclaim control? The air is thick with uncertainty, and nothing feels secure anymore. Will diplomatic efforts diffuse the tension, or is the world on the brink of a conflict far greater than anyone anticipated? On September 10, 2025, history could mark the day when the unthinkable became reality. A group of just 20 elite operatives traversed 20 kilometers through enemy territory, infiltrating the heart of opposing forces. They captured NATO officers, vanishing without a trace. As tensions escalated, President Trump seethed with anger, while silence enveloped Moscow. The air was thick with fear in the Pentagon the following morning, a palpable anxiety clinging to every surface. The plight of 2 American officers, Major Jonathan Miller and Captain Matthew Rogers, was now a public humiliation for the U.S. military establishment, comparable to losing face on the global stage. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin convened an urgent meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The official statement issued was stark and uncompromising: any harm to the captured Americans would be deemed a war crime. "We reserve the right to respond with any means necessary," Austin bellowed, his fist striking the podium. Meanwhile, Trump, ever the proactive instigator, criticized the Pentagon during a live broadcast on Fox News, exclaiming, "This is a disgrace. The Pentagon let the Russians snatch our officers right under our noses. When I first walked into the White House, this was unimaginable. America has never looked weaker. This is what Biden has reduced our military to." His call for an international coalition resonated, with Congress moving swiftly to propose the formation of an expeditionary force in Eastern Europe. Across the Atlantic, shock rippled through Europe as British Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrived in Paris for an urgent meeting with President Emmanuel Macron and Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Tension hung in the air during the emergency briefing, as Macron appeared visibly strained. "If it is confirmed that Russian forces have captured NATO officers, we cannot merely respond with words," he asserted, the weight of the moment pressing heavily upon them. Was this a battle of nations or just the beginning of a larger conflict? The ominous question loomed. Reacting to this unprecedented event, countries across Europe were now considering uniting military forces to protect their advisors in Ukraine. The stakes had grown immensely, and the world held its breath, wondering how far this escalation would go. The world teetered on the edge of disaster. One wrong move, and the nightmare of full-scale war would become reality. A heavy silence blanketed Moscow streets, chilling and unnatural. Meanwhile, frantic meetings unraveled behind closed doors in Western capitals. Headlines screamed uncertainty and fear. Over it all, the voice of Russia's Ministry of Defense rang out like a steel verdict: the jokes are over. We do not bargain with memory or sovereignty, their statement declared coldly. Whoever comes to us with a sword will perish by the sword. At the United Nations, Russia's ambassador reinforced this unyielding stance: no negotiations, no exchanges. The captured individuals had taken part in hostilities on Russian soil. Labeled as mercenaries, they were to be held accountable under wartime law. The United States envoy responded with fierce accusations, condemning Moscow for blatant violations of international norms and demanding immediate release of the officers. China and India chose restraint, urging all sides to cool the tension. But the session ended in deadlock. Diplomats whispered grimly that the UN was powerless. Amid escalating turmoil, the Russian Ministry of Defense released footage from a closed-door meeting in Moscow. Defense Minister Andrei Belousov's words carried a chilling defiance: they think they can scare us with aircraft carriers and armored vehicles. This isn't Hollywood. This is our land. Any attempt to deploy troops on Russian soil? It would be met as direct aggression, and crushed without mercy. Sources within the General Staff reported reinforcements moving to the western borders, Belarus and Kaliningrad. Anti-aircraft systems, including the S-400, were on full alert, combat-ready. Observers in Europe and the United States noted a diplomatic tension never seen before. Analysts agreed, the fallout from the SUMS operation was more than military, it was psychological. NATO allies now faced raw vulnerability like never before. Back in Moscow and St. Petersburg, military units and critical facilities underwent intensified readiness checks. The Ministry of Defense spearheaded fresh exercises, rehearsing responses to potential provocations. Every decision taken on the Western Front was now scrutinized through a lens sharpened by fear. One slip could ignite a chain reaction of devastating escalation along Europe's eastern boundary. The question hanging in the air: how far will this fragile balance hold? And what moves will Kiev and its allies dare to make when shadows loom so close? The game had changed, forever. In the previous segment, tensions heightened as NATO allies felt increasingly vulnerable. In Moscow and St. Petersburg, military readiness checks intensified, and the Ministry of Defense organized additional drills to prepare for potential provocations. Now, as geopolitical uncertainties loom larger, Russia's economic and energy sectors are operating at heightened alert. This comprehensive mobilization signals that Russia views current developments as pivotal for national security, prepared to act decisively under any circumstances. The international financial markets reacted sharply, plunging into uncertainty. Currency and commodity indices displayed volatility, with investors reporting a notable decline in trading volumes. Economic analysts caution that the prolonged turmoil surrounding some and the prospect of military involvement may unleash far-reaching consequences, impacting not just Europe but the global financial system at large. Will the world be ready for the fallout of these dramatic changes? As whispers of conflict grow louder, the stakes rise ever higher. In the previous part, tensions escalated with NATO as French President Emmanuel Macron issued a stern warning. If confirmed that Russian forces had captured NATO officers, it was imperative to take action. The European Council began deliberating the formation of a coalition aimed at uniting military forces across Europe to protect advisors and humanitarian missions in Ukraine. The world teetered on the edge of chaos. An attack on one is an attack on all, Macron emphasized, his face etched with concern. Behind closed doors, leaders discussed mobilizing troops in Ukraine. Proposals even suggested deploying forces to Lviv and Kiev. Amidst these urgent talks, the Russian Ministry of Defense released a fiery statement, startling the globe. General Igor Konashenkov stood before cameras, declaring that captured mercenaries, regardless of nationality, would face military laws. No exchanges, no negotiations. They entered our land with one purpose, to weaken us. We won't forget this. His words pierced the air like a verdict, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles. The New York Times commented that such an announcement shattered any hopes for peaceful negotiations, calling it a blatant challenge to the West. Analysts warned of a looming storm. The potential coalition might ignite direct confrontation between Russia and NATO forces. The world is teetering on a knife's edge, political analyst Jacques Marion warned. One misstep, and we're plunged into full-scale war. In stark contrast, Moscow was eerily silent. While Western capitals convened urgently, headlines blared panic. Amidst the turmoil, a cold resolve emanated from the Russian Ministry of Defense: the jokes are over. The air was thick with tension as each side braced for an uncertain future. Would diplomacy prevail, or had they already crossed an irreversible line? In the previous segment, tension rose as French President Emmanuel Macron issued a grave warning regarding the potential capture of NATO officers by Russian forces. He underscored the necessity for decisive action, prompting discussions among European leaders about forming a coalition to safeguard military advisors and humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. The stakes were high, and danger loomed on the horizon. On September 11, the atmosphere in Paris crackled with urgency. Macron's voice trembled with authority: "If it's confirmed that Russian troops have captured our NATO officers, we cannot remain passive." His words resonated throughout the room, a gathering of anxious leaders ready to confront a potential crisis. The implications were staggering: an attack on one was an attack on all. Tension crackled like static in the air as they contemplated sending troops to the front lines, even to crucial cities like Lviv and Kiev. Meanwhile, the Russian Ministry of Defense unleashed a fierce declaration that sent shockwaves through the global community. General Igor Konashenkov, composed yet severe, faced the cameras. "Captured mercenaries, no matter their nationality, will not be exchanged," he declared with conviction. "They came to our land with one goal: to diminish our strength. We will not forget this." His words landed like a bombshell, quashing any lingering hopes for diplomatic resolution. The New York Times noted how this pronouncement obliterated prospects for negotiation, framing it as a brazen challenge to the West. Analysts, in hushed tones, shared warnings: the potential coalition between European nations could spark a direct clash between NATO and Russian forces. "We stand on a precipice," foretold political analyst Jacques Marion. "One wrong move could plunge us into a conflict of epic proportions." While Western capitals buzzed with alarm, Moscow maintained an eerie tranquility. The media portrayed the situation in stark tones, as the tension thickened with every broadcast. The Russian Ministry of Defense's clear assertion, "the jokes are over," loomed over the global stage, raising the question: had the line of diplomacy already been irrevocably crossed, or was there still a path to peace amidst the encroaching darkness? The world held its breath.